In November 2018, a group of fishermen peered toward the shores of North Sentinel Island and saw a chilling sight. Dark figures of island tribesmen dragging a lifeless body across the beach. That body was soon identified as 26-year-old John Allen Chau, an American adventurer and missionary who had risked everything to contact one of the world's most isolated tribes. The Sentinelese people of North Sentinel Island had made it violently clear for centuries that outsiders are unwelcome. Yet Chau felt a higher calling to reach them. His doomed journey to this forbidden island remains shrouded in mystery and controversy. Who was John Allen Chau? What drove him to such a perilous mission? And why did it end in tragedy on a remote beach in the Indian Ocean? The answers lie in an extraordinary tale of faith, adventure, and the uncompromising will of an ancient tribe to remain untouched by the outside world. John Allen Chau grew up with an imagination fueled by wilderness and adventure. Born December 18, 1991, in Alabama and raised in the Pacific Northwest, he spent his boyhood poring over tales like Robinson Crusoe and Hatchet, dreaming of survival in far-off lands. As a child, he even painted his face with wild berry juice and roamed his backyard with homemade bows and spears, pretending he was an explorer, fending for himself in unknown jungles. This early fascination with adventure was more than a phase. It planted in him a lifelong thirst for the wild and the unknown. Each story he read and every outdoor escapade in his backyard seemed to reinforce a destiny he felt was calling him. Yet adventure was only half of young Chau's identity. He was also a devout Christian raised in a faith-driven household. His mother was active in religious ministry, and his father, though later skeptical of organized religion, had been an immigrant who found community in the church. John embraced Christianity with passion. In high school, he went on mission trips abroad, experiences that strengthened his conviction that spreading his faith was his life's purpose. He attended the evangelical Oral Roberts University in Oklahoma, preparing academically and spiritually for missionary work. Those who knew him recall an infectiously enthusiastic young man, an adventure blogger, an outdoorsman on one hand, and a zealous evangelist on the other. To John Allen Chau, conquering the wilderness and winning souls went hand in hand. Chau's dual passions coalesced into a singular mission when he learned about the Sentinelese, an isolated indigenous tribe living on a remote island in the Bay of Bengal. The Sentinelese had resisted outside contact for as long as history remembers, and their island was legally off limits to visitors. To many, North Sentinel Island was a place of mystery and danger. To Chau, it became an obsession. As a teenager, he had sensed what he called God's calling to bring Christianity to this very tribe. He prepared for years to fulfill that calling. He trained with a missionary organization called All Nations International, where he stood out as one of their best trainees. The training was intense and immersive. He participated in mock scenarios simulating hostile tribes and learned how to linguistically and culturally navigate first contact situations. By his mid-20s, John Allen Chau wasn't just daydreaming about adventure, he was systematically equipping himself for what he believed was his destiny. Those close to Chau had mixed feelings about his extreme mission. His father, Dr. Patrick Chau, had grown disillusioned with religion and would later blame extreme Christianity for driving his son to fatal ends. But John was not to be dissuaded. To him, venturing to North Sentinel Island was not reckless thrill-seeking, but a profound calling. He joined a Christian boot camp in 2017 to further prepare for the unique challenge of contacting the Sentinelese. Mary Ho, All Nations Director, later described John's God-given calling as unusual but strong, saying he carried no weapon, only a Bible and fish, gifts they would recognize. Chau understood the dangers, yet his faith assured him that this was a risk worth taking. By 2018, after years of preparation, John Allen Chau was convinced that he was ready to journey to the Forbidden Island and introduce the Sentinelese to his message, even if it might cost him his life. North Sentinel Island lies in the vastness of the Indian Ocean like an emerald speck, ringed by coral reefs and shrouded by dense jungle. It is roughly the size of Manhattan, but in reality it is a world unto itself. The inhabitants, the Sentinelese, are often called the most isolated people on Earth. For an estimated 60,000 years, this tribe has lived there with virtually no substantive contact with outside civilizations. Genetic studies and linguistic clues suggest the Sentinelese are direct descendants of some of the first humans to migrate out of Africa, their language utterly unlike any other, even those of neighboring Andaman Island tribes. In short, they have been alone for millennia and intend to keep it that way. A Sentinelese tribesman aims his bow at an Indian Coast Guard helicopter after the 2004 tsunami, signaling outsiders to stay away. To the outside world, the Sentinelese appear resolute, even ferocious, in defending their isolation. They vigorously reject all outsiders. Anthropologists and officials who have approached the island have been greeted with flights of arrows and spears. One iconic photograph from 2004, above, shows a lone Sentinelese archer on the beach, drawing his bow at a hovering Coast Guard helicopter. The helicopter had been sent to check on the tribe after a tsunami, yet the Sentinelese man's stance made the tribe's message unmistakable. "We don't want you here." In fact, the very survival of the Sentinelese after that tsunami, without any outside aid, spoke volumes. Of the tens of millions affected by the disaster, the Sentinelese alone needed no help, underscoring how self-sufficient and unyielding they are in maintaining their way of life. The hostility of the Sentinelese is not mindless savagery. It is born of historical experience and a desire to protect their community. The outside world has given them little reason to trust. In the late 19th century, British colonial officers landed on North Sentinel and kidnapped several islanders, an elderly couple and some children, in a misguided attempt at contact. The captives quickly fell ill. The older pair died, likely from exposure to foreign diseases, and the horrified British officer hastily returned the children to the island with gifts. To the Sentinelese, this episode was probably a traumatic encounter, confirming that outsiders brought death. In more recent times, other Andaman tribes who were contacted and colonized suffered devastation. Populations of once isolated groups like the Onge and Great Andamanese plummeted, their societies upended by disease and dependency. The Sentinelese had observed this fate from afar and learned well. Their continued hostility has been described by experts as easily understandable, for the outside world has brought them little but violence and contempt. Today, the government of India recognizes North Sentinel Island as a protected territory. It's illegal to approach closer than 5 nautical miles of its shores. This quarantine isn't just for the tribe's privacy, but for their survival. The Sentinelese likely have no immunity to common illnesses like flu or measles, making any outsider a potentially lethal vector for disease. A simple cold could spark a fatal epidemic among them. For decades now, official policy has been to leave the Sentinelese alone, after earlier contact missions were deemed too dangerous and counterproductive. Visits to the island were halted in the 1990s, and the tribe has enjoyed legal isolation, free from interference. The few times authorities or curious souls have breached this perimeter, the results were dire. In 2006, 2 Indian fishermen illegally ventured too close and were killed by Sentinelese warriors. Their bodies were reportedly placed on bamboo stakes facing the sea, as an eerie warning to intruders. This pattern has repeated whenever the outside world doesn't heed the boundary. The message from the Sentinelese is consistent and clear. They desire complete isolation. This fiercely guarded autonomy is what Allen Chau was determined to penetrate. It was a collision course of ideals: Chau's mission to save the Sentinelese through contact versus the Sentinelese determination to save themselves through isolation. Allen Chau arrived in the Andaman Islands in November 2018, fully aware of the peril that lay ahead. By this time, he had made multiple prior trips to the region, 4 visits in the span of a few years, quietly laying groundwork for his ultimate attempt. He knew that stepping foot on North Sentinel was illegal and could be deadly, but in his mind, the eternal reward outweighed earthly risk. With unwavering resolve, Chau covertly secured the help of local fishermen to take him near the island, offering them 25,000 rupees, around $350, to risk the illicit voyage. Under cover of darkness on November 14th, their boat approached to a point a few miles off the forbidden shore. From there, John planned to go alone. In the pre-dawn gloom, he prayed and prepared for the most important encounter of his life. On the morning of November 15, 2018, Chau set out in a kayak, paddling toward North Sentinel Island's shore, with nothing but his waterproof Bible and some gifts. Hoping to appear non-threatening, he stripped down to his underwear and began calling out to the tribe in English, shouting, "My name is John. I love you, and Jesus loves you." He also hollered phrases in Xhosa, a language he had learned in South Africa, and even chanted some phrases of praise, unsure if any of it could be understood. From the tree line, dark figures emerged, Sentinelese warriors, watching his every move. They responded with a cacophony of shouts and whoops, but their words were unintelligible to him. Desperate to connect, John tried to mimic their calls, parroting their language back in hopes of winning trust. The result was unexpected. The tribespeople burst out laughing at the strange outsider imitating them. For a moment, it almost seemed like a breakthrough, laughter rather than immediate violence. Encouraged, Chau waded ashore and continued approaching, singing worship songs and preaching passages from the book of Genesis at the top of his lungs. He offered them gifts, a small fish, some aluminum cookware, perhaps a soccer ball he had brought along. The Sentinelese did not rush to greet him, but they watched warily. Then the mood shifted. A boy, possibly a young teen, suddenly raised his bow and launched an arrow directly at the stranger on their beach. John had been holding his Bible out, and incredibly, the arrow struck the Bible, piercing straight into the thick book's pages. In that instant, Chau's sense of calm collapsed into panic. Realizing how quickly he could be killed, he yanked the arrow out of his Bible and turned to run. The Sentinelese warriors were now knocking more arrows, advancing toward him. In a frantic scramble, Chau tossed the fish and other gifts toward them, a final gesture, and sprinted back to his kayak. He flung himself into the small kayak and paddled furiously. "I paddled like I have never in my life," he later wrote of that moment. Miraculously, he made it beyond the range of their arrows and back to the fisherman's boat offshore, shaken but alive. That night, aboard the fishing boat anchored in safety, Allen Chau recorded the day's events in his diary. The pages reveal a young man processing the collision of his hopes with harsh reality. He confessed to feeling fear and disappointment that the tribe didn't accept me right away. Yet remarkably, Chau's faith remained unshaken. He resolved to try again, believing perhaps a second attempt might soften their hearts. In a letter to his family written that night, aware it could be his last, he struck a tone of both zeal and peace. "You guys might think I'm crazy in all this, but I think it's worth it to declare Jesus to these people," he penned in his final note home. He urged his parents not to be upset if he did not return. "Please do not be angry at them or at God if I get killed. Rather, please live your lives in obedience to whatever He has called you to. This is not a pointless thing. The eternal lives of this tribe are at hand." These words show that Chau was fully conscious of the mortal danger he faced, yet he viewed his mission in almost biblical terms, as an eternal battle for souls. He signed off the letter with a poignant benediction, Soli Deo Gloria, glory to God alone. On November 16, 2018, against the fisherman's pleadings, Allen Chau prepared for one final attempt to reach the Sentinelese. At first light, he directed the fisherman to drop him some distance from shore and then leave, hoping that a lone approach without the boat in view might appear less threatening. He equipped himself with his kayak once more and pushed off toward the island, disappearing into the surf and morning mist. This time, the fishermen did not stay to watch. They had agreed to return in the evening to check on him. When they came back, what they witnessed confirmed their worst fears. From a distance, they spotted the Sentinelese on the beach, dragging John's body across the sand before laying it in the earth. Allen Chau was dead, killed by the people he had come so far to save. The exact details of his final moments remain unknown. Whether he walked up to the Sentinelese calmly preaching, or whether they ambushed him before he could utter a word, only the tribespeople know. What is clear is that he had been struck by their arrows, a volley of sharp, uncompromising rejection from the island he so loved in his heart. In the aftermath, news of Chau's death made headlines around the world. Indian authorities faced a conundrum: how to recover the body of a man slain in a place no outsiders allowed to go. A police boat approached North Sentinel Island cautiously in the days after, only to see tribesmen on the shore, armed with bows, signaling the same warning that had been communicated to Chau. The officials had no choice but to withdraw. Any retrieval operation was deemed too dangerous for both sides. Eventually, the Indian government announced there would be no attempt to recover John Allen Chau's remains, respecting the tribe's territory and avoiding further bloodshed. To this day, Chau's body rests somewhere on North Sentinel Island, buried by the very people he died trying to contact. Back home, Chau's family publicly forgave the Sentinelese, saying John had nothing but love for them and that they do not blame the tribe for his death. It was a graceful coda to a grim tale. Even in their grief, his loved ones understood that the Sentinelese were simply defending their home. John Allen Chau's death was tragic. It was a missionary's zeal colliding with the tribe's choice to stay untouched. Some called him a martyr. Others, including his father, called it reckless. To the long isolated Sentinelese, his landing was illegal and dangerous. He could have brought disease that might kill them. North Sentinel is off limits for a reason. India's exclusion zone protects both visitors and the tribe. With no immunity, even the flu can be deadly. Their arrows are survival, not hate. So ask this: do we have the right to force change on people who say no? For decades, the Sentinelese have made their answer plain. Modern law agrees. India halted contact in the 1990s. Most now accept that uncontacted peoples must be left alone. Some places and peoples are not ours to change. Afterward, the warning grew louder. Stay away. Enforcement came by arrows. And a larger question remained: when does faith become hubris? The line is crossed when no is refused. In the end, it reads like a parable. The Sentinelese kept their island. Chau lost his life. Some places and peoples are not ours to change. Respecting that boundary can mean life or death.